Well, Strixhaven's been out for a week, so now I can finally talk about the budget cards to grab from Budget Ravnica. What's up, guys? My name is Suris, and I make budget Magic the Gathering decks that can dominate tables without dominating your wallet. If that's something that you think you'd like to watch more of, then click subscribe, hit the like button, tell a couple friends what I'm doing over here, and everything else the YouTube algorithm loves, because I like being able to eat food, and unfortunately, YouTube is not a great career. I'm kidding, I'm actually in a really privileged position to be able to even do this full-time. So what do we have going on today? Well, Strixhaven is out now, so it's time to talk about everything that's worth picking up in the set that's about $1 or less. We got a couple of cards that technically break $1 because I really selfishly wanted to talk about them, but, you know, we'll get to those cards when we get there. I've got everything broken down by color and, well, technically guild association, so let's get right into things after we talk about y'all's fan art. So first we have this piece from Riddle of Lightning, where I was trying to talk on my stream about negativity bias, and then, of course, just as always will happen with kind of avatar that I have, somebody just pointed out in chat, hey, I drew you NSFW, actually. Then we have this piece from Delicious Compliance, where they said it's a slime Suris as a warrior cat. And finally, another piece from Riddle of Lightning, with me as a mermaid saying, I want to be where the third spaces are. Which, you know, may be the name of an upcoming podcast I'll be doing that's going to have a lot of guests like Anthony Grimigula and also Claire from Proton John. Yes, I know I mispronounced one of those names. Yes, they've already told me I mispronounced their name. But my sources inform me that he's Italian, so let's go ahead and get this out of the way before I get anybody else upset in the comment section. So, one of the biggest things to note in this set is that the Slowlands got reprinted. Well, the enemy-colored ones. Dreamroot Cascade, Stundown Pass, Deathcap Glade, Shattered Sanctum, and, of course, Stormcarved Coast are now all a lot cheaper. Now, you'll notice that one of these is a little over $1, and everything else is under $1. Why that is, I have no idea. I'm not an expert on Magic the Gathering, I just talk about it, like everyone else on this platform. But if you're a budget player who's been wanting to run these lands for a bit and they've been outside of your financial reach, now should be a very good time to go ahead and pick these up for yourself so you can start jamming them in your commander decks. That said, let's go ahead and talk about the cards that the Quandrix Guild, or school, or what, everything's Ravnica, I'm sorry. Let's talk about what Quandrix has that's under $1 and really fantastic. Applied Geometry is your standard 4-mana clones card, but with a twist. It gives you a clone that creates a creature with 6/1/1 counters. I actually use this in my Quandrix deck that I talked about on the channel earlier, so maybe consider picking it up because it's a fantastic card for clones decks. Birdo-Wise Extrapolator is a pretty decent commander and great in the 99 of a lot of X-cost decks, since she gives you repeated access to an X-cost ability. I've seen people jamming this in Magus Lucia Kane to pretty decent effect. I'd also say the new Embrace the Paradox is great because I am a sucker for Urban Evolution, and this is just Urban Evolution but instant. So now we've got 4 versions of this effect, not counting the Growth Spirals and Explorers of the world. Then there's the Horseshoe Crab for any deck with X-Spells that lets you do a lot of card selection for casting them. Quandrix Charm, because I'm going to be honest, if I have access to good charms, I'm always going to be happy. I love modality and spells, and being able to choose a counter spell or an enchantment removal or a card that can make a creature bigger or smaller for combat just means it's a perfect card all around for high utility. It's also great in Cascade decks that typically don't get to run counter spells, but now you have one more option of a counter spell you can run that can just become an enchantment destroyer if you throw into it with Cascade or Discover. Then we have Mind into Matter, a Simic version of Rishkar's Expertise. This lets you draw X cards, then put any permanent with mana value X or less from your hand onto the battlefield. I would argue it's worse than Rishkar's Expertise in that it is harder to get it to function with more mana. It only works with permanents, and to get the 5 mana cards that Rishkar's lets you get, you got to spend 7 mana into this, whereas Rishkar's is 6, but Rishkar's requires you to have a creature out on the board to get maximum benefit from it in the first place. So I'd say this is about a side grade to Rishkar's, personally. It's a lot more narrow in what it does, but it's a lot more free in how you can access it. After that, let's go ahead and talk about Lorehold. Aziza, Mage Tower Captain, allows you to get a fantastic way to copy spells in Boros. Honestly, as a 2-mana commander, having the ability to do Boros copy spells seems like it's going to be a really fun deck in its own right. Maybe I'll have to make a video about that at some point. Borrowed Knowledge is also a fantastic wheel, letting you discard your hand, but draw cards equal to an opponent's larger hand. Boros typically has draw problems, so being able to piggyback off of the blue player is always a really good thing. Lorehold Charm, again, it's a charm. Being able to give you recursion for artifacts is great. Being able to give you a just giant sweeping 1/1 to your board is great, and forcing your opponents to sacrifice Soul Ring is also fantastic. I don't see anything that's not to love about this card. Practice Scrollsmith is another entry that's here that I think we need to talk about. First Strike and an ability to blink a thing. Anytime something that comes down and blinks a thing is entered into the library of cards we have access to in Magic, I'm gonna be honest, I always think the card is fantastic. So Suspend Aggression is another one of those cards. Kind of. You see, it exiles 2 cards and turns one of them into Impulse Draw, and the other one, well, into Impulse Draw as well. You exile 1 card from the board and 1 card from the top of your deck. You can use this to reuse ETBs, a lot like airbending decks use, or you can use this defensively to stop a creature from punching you in the schnoggin. You can also use this on any token that's on the board to just completely obliterate it from play while also getting some Impulse Draw. There's a lot of ways you can use this as removal and advantage at the same time. Arc of Hunger is another card for Lorehold I want to talk about. It's just a standard draw spell. It lets you mill a card and then play the card this turn. And if a card leaves your graveyard, it gives you a little bit of burn. I'm going to be honest, that burn is not the thing that I'm mostly worried about. It's really good with Sun Titan style cards, but that mill a card ability I think is worth looking into, because sometimes I can mill a card in Mardu, for instance, and not want to play it, but certainly want to reanimate it, and that is what gives this card the flexibility. In a Boros deck, it's mill 1 card, and maybe you'll be able to use it this turn. In a deck that has access to green or blue or black on top of the Boros colors, now we're talking about a deck that is able to cheat that card into play with various means. Then we have the Hardened Academic. It has a discard effect to gain lifelink. That's not the most important thing here. It's the fact that when 1 or more cards leave your graveyard, we get to put a +1/+1 counter on any creature we control, while it's also a card with flying and haste. I'm going to be honest, the deck that I immediately see this working well in is a Sonic the Hedgehog deck. It's in the colors of Sonic, it has haste to benefit from Sonic, and it's got an ability that benefits 1/1 counter strategies, which is what Sonic the Hedgehog ultimately does. Then let's talk about the Golgari set, or, you know, Witherbloom. Again, I'm going to keep on saying the Ravnik thing. I'm sorry, I have to. But Black Loafing Pest says when you gain life, put a 1/1 counter on every creepy, crawly thing you have on the board. This is a engine of sorts for just destroying people outright. This is basically Golgari Jetmir for the specific tokens that Black cares about. You get a board with enough tokens, you play Black, and then you just end the game instantly, especially if those tokens happen to have a bunch of Soul Sister style cards in them, like Essence Warden or Death Greeter. You can really, really quickly gain a lot of life triggers with this. Bogwork Lumerette is, again, one of those cards that's a Soul Sister. When another creature enters the battlefield, you gain a life. This is exactly what this wants to see. These cards were made for one another, just letting you know. Essence Knit Scholar is a new Golgari draw engine that also makes a token once. I'm going to be honest, it's a bad Morbid Opportunist that comes with a 1/1 token as well. I've been running it in my Dina deck, and I've been enjoying it quite a lot, so I think it's pretty good. Grapple with Death is another version of the Mortify, Putrefy style of card, so it's as good as those, except it's a sorcery, which means you're only running this if you do not have access to other cards like Beast Within, but sometimes you can't find them in your collection, and sometimes you've got a deck that cares so much about that 1 life gain, like, I don't know, Black, that you're willing to take a worse card that is able to do the same job, but give you more synergy. Then we have Teacher's Past, which has Menace and the ability to return from the graveyard whenever you pay Golgari mana. So it's Reassembling Skeleton. This is Reassembling Skeleton. Every deck that uses Reassembling Skeleton is going to be able to do the same things with this card as it does with Reassembling Skeleton. I may be incredibly aristocrat-brained and just brain-poisoned by sacrificing my own cards a billion times, but when I see a card that looks like Reassembling Skeleton, my neurons activate. Then we have Vicious Rivalry, a new Toxic Deluge style card, paying any amount of life in order to blow up all artifacts and creatures with mana value X or less. It's somewhere between Gaze of Granite and Toxic Deluge, whereas Gaze can get rid of everything, but requires mana, and Toxic Deluge wants you to use life. This doesn't get rid of as many things as Gaze of Granite does, but it does give you the access to life loss as the mechanism to destroy things, which is far better and far stronger. So it's okay that it's a lot more narrow in its application. But let's be honest, blowing up all artifacts and creatures with mana value X or less is already plenty. If the Grixis player loses all their mana rocks and their board, I'm going to be honest, I'm not super worried about them for the rest of the game. And of course, the Witherbloom charm. It's another charm. It's got the Deadly Dispute style effect where you sack a thing and draw 2 cards, but it says permanent, so it's a lot more flexible. You have the ability to gain 5 life and blow up a non-land permanent with mana value 2 or less. This deck is going to see a lot of use in specifically Hearthhole and Tval decks. Being able to sacrifice any permanent at all means you can sack lands instead of just creatures to gain access to that draw, and then Hearthhole sees that, burns everybody, or Tval sees that, and then now has new things in the grave that you can yank out and get access to, like, say, a Mosswort Bridge, a really fun card to abuse in Tval. Then we have Dina's Guidance. It's a Grim Tutor for creatures that's Golgari, functionally. Like, that's fine. That's all it has to be. It's 1 mana less than a Diabolic Tutor. It has instant strapped on it, so you can hold this up when you're trying to hold up removal. There's nothing not to love about it if you like tutors. But now we got to talk about the card that's cheating. Cauldron of Essence. This is my selfish include that is not technically under $1. It might end up being that, but this is one of my favorite cards of all time, Altar of Baal, with a Zulaport Cutthroat glued onto it and a sacrifice clause instead of an exile clause. All for 1 more mana. I'm gonna be honest, I love this thing. I have shoved this in every single deck I've been able to. I need as many copies of these as I can possibly find. I am going to add a copy of this to Tval. I have a copy in Savra. I have a copy in Dina. If I'm being perfectly honest, I can't think of a deck that should not be running this card. Having access to repeatable reanimation, and all you have to do is sacrifice a creature. Just consider this. You always have access to at least 1 creature all the time in Commander, and it's your commander. Sometimes sacking your commander to reanimate something you need at the time is incredibly powerful, and then sacking something else to get the commander back out to negate the commander tax is going to get you back where you need to be. I'm going to be honest, I have had so many games that have been swung in my favor by Altar of Baal that having a card that looks like it but is better is just gravy. My only problem is I can't run it in Sephiroth, but my god, this thing is beautiful. Now let's talk about my picks for Silverquill. We have the Conciliator's Duelist. When this enters, draw a card and every player loses 1 life. That's already great. I love Shroud Stomper. This is a mini Shroud Stomper. That is exactly what it is. It just has Warlock built into it instead of Elemental, so there's situations where it's not going to be as good, but Warlock is an outlaw, so this is going to be a very good card to include in decks like Olivia that care a lot about outlaws. And it's got the Repartee effect, which says when you cast an instant or sorcery spell that targets a creature, you get something. In this case, you exile 1 creature and then put it back on the battlefield. So it's an outlaw, which is a good creature type combination. It has draw, so it replaces itself when it comes out. It has burn, so it's good for blinking, and it has an ability that says that if you're casting a blink spell on something on your board, extend that blink spell and turn it into another blink spell. This thing is great. And speaking of blink spells, we're going to put in Fix What's Broken, because if there's one thing blink decks love to do, it is have things enter the battlefield en masse to get lots of ETB effects, and Fix What's Broken does exactly that. being able to pay 4 mana and X life to grab everything that costs a similar amount of mana from your grave that's an artifact or creature is really, really good. I cannot stress this. The amount of times where you're playing a Blink deck and so many of your cards cost 2 or 3 mana specifically, so you are able to use Fix What's Broken and grab all of these similarly costed cards, drop them on the battlefield, and get tons of effects all at once. It's great. Then we have the Moment of Reckoning, which is a quadruple removal spell for 7 or a quadruple reanimation for 7. I'm going to be honest, this is always going to be a quadruple reanimation for me. I can't think of a reason why it wouldn't be, and this is making its way both into budget Sephiroth and any other version of Sephiroth I build from this point onward if I can fit it in, because my god, reanimate 4 times at once, and it's reanimate non-land permanent, so I can get anything I want at all. If I'm playing Orzhov Aristocrats, I can get Grave Pact and Dictate of Erebos and Butcher of Malakir all back from my grave at once with a singular Fleshbag Marauder, so everybody gets their boards wiped immediately. So instead of losing 4 creatures like the card wants me to do, I'm going to use it to make everybody lose, I don't know, 9? Nope, I did the math wrong. It's 12. Then we have Prismari, and Abstract Paint Mage is your standard just mana generator. We got one of these last set with Lorwyn. I forgot Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles existed. Let's continue to forget it existed. But yeah, this is a mana generator that only works for instants and sorceries, but that's fine because you're in the colors to use exactly those. The Color Storm Stallion is like the Otter from Bloomburrow. Cast a bunch of instants and sorceries and get a bunch of copies of this on the board if they have enough mana to warrant that. Rapturous Moment is a ritual that lets you draw 3 and discard 2. If it was an instant, I would say this is a broken card, because then it would be an auto-include in any deck like, say, Azula. But since it is not an instant, it is just going to be an extender in decks like, say, Veyrin. In decks like Veyrin, this thing is going to be doing a ton of work because those decks are running Double Vision, Swarm Intelligence, and they are running anything that can copy spells. They are probably running, and Rapturous Moment is going to be able to be copied a bunch and give them a huge extension on their turn. Then we have Sonar Unfinished Genius. It's a mana dork. It gives you treasure, but that's good enough. That's a really, really good mana dork to have. That also has a Wild Idea stapled on it, so a 5 mana tutor for whatever you damn well please. Traumatic Critique is a removal spell that doubles as a Tormenting Voice, so I'm going to be honest, sometimes just pay 2 mana for it and treat it like a Tormenting Voice. Then we have Zephi and the Tempests. I couldn't fit the Elder Dragons on here because they are too expensive, but having a creature like Zephi that gives you a one with the multiverse effect, getting a free spell every single turn, there's nothing not to love about that. Before we move on to the single colored cards, let's talk colorless cards, and I've already done a video on this guy, so you knew he was coming up. Page Loose Leaf, a fantastic new commander who generates 1 mana and nothing else. I mean, you could clone him in order to gain access to his discard ability and go into your deck and dig for things, so that's a thing you can do if you want to get really techie with it, but I like him as a commander for Eldrazi decks because I have been hurt as a child. Then we have the Great Hall of the Biblioplex, a standard untapped land that can give you mana that you need for any instance or sorcery. This is functionally the same as any of your lands that say generate 1 colorless mana or 1 mana for the creature type you named. It's the same card. It's the exact same card. That other line of text at the bottom does not matter. Not important. Then we have the Petrified Hamlet, which is just a pithing needle for lands. And I'm going to be honest, I love this thing. Telling somebody that their Maze of Ith will never function for the rest of the game. Telling somebody that their Maze's End won't function for the rest of the game. Telling somebody that their Gaia's Cradle is fucking toast is great. And all you have to do is have a singular slot dedicated to a colorless mana pip. And there's plenty of situations where you need colorless mana anyway, like in Eldrazi decks. Please don't hurt me. All right, let's go through the last ones in WUBRG order. Elite Interceptor is a tapper-untapper, and that always has utility in multiple decks. Ennis is another card that is fantastic for Blink decks. It's functionally a Charming Prince. We then have Primary Research, which is a Sun Titan that allows you to draw cards as you do Sun Titan things. Then we have Shattered Acolyte, a standard 2-mana creature that sacks to blow up artifacts or enchantments. These are always good. Cathar Commando's the best one, but these are always good. And then we have Stirring Hope Singer, a card that I want to make a case for real quick. I think this is fantastic in control decks because this says when you cast an instant or sorcery that targets a creature, not your creature, a creature. So if I'm playing this, and I have a handful of tokens, because inadvertent things control decks can do, like play Planeswalkers, and I use this on the board, not only am I going to be having a good blocker for, say, Planeswalkers, not only do I have a card with lifelink, which is really good to have access to, you have no idea how often a little bit of life gain will save you in a game, but you have a card that says that when I fuck with my opponent shit, I'm going to put a 1/1 counter on everything I control. This is already going to be a good deck card for decks like Sonic that care about 1/1 counters, but any deck that has a high amount of removal spells that target things are going to immediately gain massive benefit from having access to this card. And starting with blue, of course, we have a counterspell. It's a negate that can be an omni counterspell if you need. I'm going to be running this in budget decks for a while, so look forward to seeing a lot of this. Jadzi, Steward of Fate, making a shit ton of green fractals is interesting to me. It's also weird because I thought Jadzi was a student of the Prismari campus, and yet they're making fractals. I don't think that's Prismari's thing. Then we have Orsai, the Tide Choreographer. It's a Mull Drifter that wants you to have a big board, and it can be a commander. That's what it is. Wisdom of the Ages is your standard reliquary tower on a stick that gives you access to your entire grave when you cast it, so that's great. Costs a lot of mana, so there's only a few decks this works in, but I'm running it in Quandrix, and it works really well. Another counterspell, Mana Sculpt. This says if you have a wizard, keep all the mana, turning it every time you counter something into a mana drain of sorts with this. Harmonized Trio is a repeatable Brainstorm, and Pensive Professor is repeatable draw when you get 1/1 counters, I don't know, from shit like Stirring Hopeslinger in your, Esper control deck that your friends definitely let you play, and definitely don't get mad when you take out at Friday Night Magic. And then we have the Skycoach Conductor, a creature with flash, which is pretty good on its own, that also lets you have a all-aboard prepared, which can be used to blink anything on your board that is not a pilot. If you find a way to strip pilot from this, you can do some pretty broken things with them, but in most scenarios, I think just being able to drop this down on an opponent's turn and then use it on your turn as an extender for something like a Sun Titan is going to be all it needs to be fantastic. Then for black, we got Arnon. I already made a video on her. She's a Zulaport Cutthroat, kind of, and those are always going to be great to pick up for me. We have the Poisoner's Apprentice. This is a Rabid Chupacabra Light. Same stat line, 1 less mana, but it can knock out indestructible creatures because it's a --/ card. Then we have Pox Plague, a card that will make you lose every friend you possibly ever had, because sometimes this is actually MLD. Remember that. It's going to come up in a future video, I promise. Then we have Scheming Silvertongue, a repeatable Sign in Blood. I've actually been enjoying testing this one out as well. And then we have Mosio Vane's New Dean, a repeatable reanimation that cares about the amount of life you've gained this turn. Aristocrat decks, Angel decks, Soul Sisters decks, all of those decks are going to get a massive amount of boosts from this thing. In red, we have Choreographed Sparks, another fantastic card that can be used to copy anything. We have a reprint of Seize the Spoils, so this is now a 15-cent card. It's a standard draw to make a treasure, discard a thing card. I love those. They're great. I use them in Sauron and Kefka. Then we have Tablet of Discovery, a 3-mana mana rock that can be a 2-mana mana rock if we are using it for instant and sorcery spells. That's pretty easy to make happen. And like in every other set that has ever existed, we're going to have the most cards in fucking green. Additive Evolution lets you do lots of really interesting fractal things, and it gives you vigilance on a creature that you throw 1/1 counters onto, which is great for making them blockers. The Selenian Tackle, this one I think is going to be interesting in Toughness Matters decks. It gives a creature O10, and then that creature fights something. I can think of a million ways this can go right for you. Comforting Counsel is Beastmaster's Ascension, but it cares about life gain. Emil is even without being legendary, it gives you access to 1/1 counters equal trample, which there's a handful of cards like Gnarlid Colony that already do, but then it's got a ability to make fractals if you desperately need to later in the game, so it's got an upside that Gnarlid Colony doesn't have, so consider yourself replaced. Then we have the Vastland Scavenger, a card that lets you mill 7 and put a creature from those onto the battlefield. This is going into Vol decks. This is dumb into Vol decks. Topiary Lecturer is a mana dork that cares about 1/1 counters. We've seen it before in Gyre Sage. Studious First Year lets you cast Rampant Growth, and I love him. Look at him. He is perfect. He is going in every green deck you've ever made from this point forward because he casts the Great Silver Standard of Ramp itself, so you can now run 2 Rampant Growths in a deck as long as you're running this little guy. Then we have Follow the Limerets, a 2-mana grab a single creature card, but it's got a twist. It can sometimes grab 2 creatures, which is pretty decent. Then we have the Wild Growth Archaic. This is a standard Hardened Scales, Renata style card, extending 1/1 counters as you go. Zamon's Experiment is your standard 4-mana ramp spell, but with a twist, because sometimes you can get creatures out of that instead. And then Planner Engineering. This is another one I broke the rules for because we got to talk about it. It is another standard 4-mana ramp spell to give you 2 lands of advantage, but because it says sacrifice lands, and it says 4 lands enter, Hearthhole loves this. Every single Lands Matter deck loves this. This is a new staple for Lands Matters decks. Just accept that you're going to be running out of a lot of resources in your deck, like basic lands, very quickly when you run lots of cards like this. And now that my throat hurts, I've gone through every card I think is worth picking up, with a couple of exceptions that are $1 or under. So let me know what you think. Let me know which ones you're going to be picking up from Strixhaven. And if I'm being honest, I don't know if I'm recording my next video right now. My throat is on fire. But that's what I get for recording this right after I'm done streaming, which is my own fault. Again, thank you everybody for watching. Hopefully you enjoyed. If you want to pick up any of these cards, please consider picking them up on Mana Pool. They are a sponsor of this channel, and if you've never used Mana Pool before, you'll get $5 off your first purchase if you use my link in the description. If you have used Mana Pool before, you won't get the $5, but you will still be supporting my channel, so I'm e-begging here. Let me e-beg. Alrighty, that's enough of that before things get weird. Let's go ahead and cut the video out so that you can go, I don't know, buy Magic the Gathering cards or something.